There was a note on the fridge. Not a tearful letter. Not a dramatic goodbye. Just a bright pink post-it stuck beside the grocery list, scribbled in her usual rush. We need to talk tonight. Don't make plans. See? I stared at it longer than I care to admit. Not because it was ominous, but because I had just refilled the fridge. I had literally just gone grocery shopping the night before. Why leave a note when she could have just texted? And yeah, before you say it, I know. It wasn't about the fridge. That sticky square was the tip of the iceberg I'd been pretending didn't exist. The iceberg I'd been politely steering around with blind optimism and discount wine. So, I didn't make plans. I microwaved leftover lasagna. I washed the dishes. I even wiped the counter twice for no reason. And when the front door finally opened at 9:17 p.m., I felt my spine stiffen like I'd been summoned to the principal's office. She walked in wearing a sweatshirt that wasn't hers. That's how it started. Not with shouting. Not with cheating accusations. Just a sweatshirt too baggy, sleeves too long, the kind of thing a guy gives a girl when they're tangled up in a moment. You don't buy that kind of fit. You earn it. She tossed her keys in the dish and said, I'm pregnant. Just like that. No build-up. No expression. My ears rang. I didn't jump for joy. I didn't cry. I just blinked. Okay. I said. Do we need to? She held up her hand. I'm going to make this simple, she said. It's not yours. I swear to you, Reddit. I stood there holding a sponge like it was going to shield me from what she just said. She continued, slowly, like I was a child trying to sound out words. But you're going to raise it. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She sat down on the bar stool and crossed her legs like she was reading off a checklist. You're good at routines. You're responsible. He's not. This kid deserves a chance, and I figured, you're the kind of guy who'd do the right thing. I remember glancing at the fridge again. That stupid post-it glowing like a warning I never understood until it was too late. I already put in your name for the insurance, she added. It's handled. My name. For someone else's kid. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you walk out right then? Trust me, I wish I had. But I just stood there like my brain was buffering, trying to catch up to the reality my wife had just casually punched me with. All I could say was, you. What? She looked at me with something between pity and irritation. You're overreacting. It's not like you ever wanted a kid the traditional way anyway. You said that yourself. No. What I'd said 2 years ago during a wine-fueled argument was that I wasn't sure if I'd make a good father. Not this. Not this. That night, I didn't sleep. She went to bed like she'd just told me the car needed an oil change. I sat on the couch until sunrise. Didn't blink. Didn't cry. And when the light started creeping through the blinds, I stood up, grabbed my duffel bag, my charger, and the old hoodie she used to steal from me before she met him, and I walked out. No text. No note. No goodbye. But the worst part? She didn't call. Not that day. Not the next. Not the week after. And I thought I was free, until something even more twisted showed up in my email. 3 days. That's how long I waited. Not for her apology, because I knew she wasn't the apologizing type. I waited for her rationalization. For the follow-up message that would say something like, I didn't mean it like that. Or, I said it wrong. Or maybe just, I panicked. But nothing came. Not a buzz. Not a ping. Not even a passive-aggressive meme like she used to send when we argued. I checked my phone every 15 minutes like some kind of lab rat who'd been trained to expect a reward. And when nothing came, I started wondering if maybe I'd made it up. Like maybe the fluorescent lights in the kitchen had played tricks on me and the words she spoke were just stress-induced nonsense. But then came the email. It was in my inbox under the subject line, important info for you, as if she was updating a coworker about next week's meeting. I clicked it like a fool, like someone hoping for a hint of regret. Instead, I got a 3-paragraph memo that could have been written by a lawyer. She thanked me, actually used the words, thank you for handling things maturely by not making a scene. She said she understood why I left, but she hoped I'd still be open to doing the right thing for the baby. That was her phrase, the right thing. Like morality had been outsourced to the man she cheated on. She even included a Google Drive folder titled Future Plans, with a spreadsheet outlining financial contributions, visitation schedules, and a sample custody agreement, all assuming I'd return and raise a child that wasn't mine. No emotion. Just logistics. Like she was coordinating a catering order. And you know what broke me? The last line of the email. Don't let your pride get in the way of doing what you're naturally good at. Naturally good at. Like I was a tool she'd gotten used to. A wrench you keep in the drawer, not because you love it, but because it gets the job done. I slammed my laptop shut so hard it startled the guy in the motel room next to mine. I could hear him pause his TV and mutter something. Probably thought I was having a breakdown. He wouldn't be wrong. That night, I walked 5 blocks to a nearby diner because I couldn't stomach being alone in that room any longer. I sat in a booth, hand shaking, staring into a watery cup of coffee that tasted like regret. The waitress, maybe in her 60s, asked me 3 times if I wanted pie. I think she could see it on me, the collapse, the grief, the bone-deep confusion. I told her no. I should have said yes. When I got back to the motel, I finally opened the spreadsheet. Row by row, it painted a future I was apparently chosen for. Monthly budgets. Emergency contacts, my name, at the top. Primary caretaker in case of absence. And beneath it all, a bolded line in red that read, Jeremy, real name changed, has agreed to emotionally support the child regardless of paternity. Asterisk. Has agreed. I hadn't even responded, and she'd already decided the story. I was the responsible fallback. The loyal, unshiny man who'd do the hard stuff while she moved on from her mistake. And here's the thing, Reddit. I started to wonder if maybe she was right. Maybe I was built for this kind of punishment. I'm not loud. I'm not charming. I don't sleep around. I listen more than I talk. I apologize first. I don't win. Maybe people like me are just meant to carry the weight. But then I remembered something. Something so small and stupid I almost brushed it off. It was a voicemail from months ago, her mom, drunk off white wine, laughing, and telling me I was too damn soft for this family. At the time, I thought she was joking. Now it feels like prophecy. I deleted the spreadsheet, deleted the email. Then I blocked her. Phone, email, socials, everything. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt something close to clarity. But clarity doesn't mean closure, because a week later, someone else contacted me. Not her. Him. The man whose sweatshirt she wore. The one who gave her the baby she didn't want to raise. He had his own version of the story. And let's just say, it made everything much worse. I didn't recognize the number when it first buzzed through. I was in the middle of a laundromat, watching my shirts get tossed around in a machine older than I am, when it rang. I let it go to voicemail. Honestly, I assumed it was someone from the motel asking about payment, or maybe one of those robot calls offering me a fake cruise. But then the same number called again 2 hours later. And again that night. I don't know what got into me, but around 11:30 p.m., after pacing that awful beige motel carpet and watching the shadow of the ceiling fan spin for half an hour, I opened the voicemail. The voice was low, cautious, and oddly polite. Hey, you don't know me. My name's Reed. I guess I'm involved in something I didn't fully understand. I know this is weird, man, but I need to talk to you. About Kasha. That was all. No number. No last name. Just a first name and a confession floating in my inbox like a message in a bottle I never asked for. I replayed it 4 times. Not because I didn't get it the first time, but because I wanted to convince myself it wasn't him. Him. The shadow figure who broke into my life without ever knocking. The one who gave Kasha the child she didn't want to claim in public. Reed. The name made me sick. Because months ago, I had seen it on her phone. Just once. A random text that said, "You were incredible last night. Can't stop thinking about you." I remember seeing it flash across the lock screen while she was in the shower. I had stared at it for what felt like hours, frozen, pulse spiking, debating whether to unlock her phone and dig further. I didn't. I told myself it was a coworker's joke. Maybe a spam message. I gaslit myself so hard I almost apologized to her for feeling weird about it. Now here he was. Reed, in the flesh, or at least, in digital voice form, asking to talk. And for what? Closure? Guilt relief? To hand over some twisted version of the truth that would unravel what little mental stability I had left? I should have ignored it. I should have buried my phone in a sock drawer and taken up meditation. Instead, I texted the number back. "What do you want?" He replied instantly. "Not what you think. I'm not proud of anything. I found something. You should see it. It's about her. About both of us, I guess." So there I was, sitting on the edge of a motel bed with a bag of sour cream chips and the kind of dread that makes your chest feel like it's caving in. And for some reason, I agreed to meet him. Neutral ground. A public spot. Coffee shop off Route 29. Noon the next day. I barely slept it again. I don't even know why I showed up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe closure. Maybe some masochistic urge to watch the train wreck up close. Reed was already there when I arrived. Late 20s, tall, gym fit, beard trimmed within an inch of its life. One of those guys who always looks like he just left a sponsored podcast. He stood up and extended a hand like we were about to negotiate a sales contract. I didn't shake it. He sat back down and started talking immediately, like he'd rehearsed this. She told me you were separated. My laugh came out like a cough. Right. Of course she did. He didn't even flinch. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think I needed to. We met at a wine festival. She said she was getting out of a dead marriage. I was drunk. She was magnetic. Of course she was. I asked him the question that had burned in my gut for weeks. Do you know about the baby? He nodded. I do now. I didn't when it happened. Then he pulled out his phone, opened his gallery, and passed it to me. On the screen was a screenshot, an email chain between Kasia and someone named Madeline. From what I could piece together, she had planned this. Or at least talked about it enough that it didn't feel accidental. Lines like, if I got pregnant, I think Elliot would stay. He wouldn't even question it. He's just that type. He's the safest option I have. Safe. Not loved. Not respected. Just safe. I handed the phone back. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. Reed looked genuinely uncomfortable. Look, man, I didn't come here to rub salt in anything. I thought you should know what kind of person she is. She used both of us. And now she's trying to rewrite the story like you volunteered for it. He wasn't wrong. But the worst part? As I sat there across from this man, this stranger who had destroyed my life without knowing it, I didn't hate him. Not like I should have. I hated myself more. For being the guy who could be counted on. The guy who never questioned. The guy who didn't see it coming until it was way too late. We didn't say much else after that. I paid for my coffee and left. He stayed behind, probably relieved it was over. That night, I started drafting a letter. Not to Kasia. Not to Reed. To the baby. Because I had a feeling Kasia wouldn't stop. She wasn't the type to accept rejection. And I knew she'd try to twist this story into something else. Something I never agreed to. And before that happened, I wanted to put my truth on record. But the letter? It wouldn't stay private for long. Because she would read it. And she'd make a mistake that would drag everything out of the shadows. The letter started off as a vent. Nothing more than a document I typed in the middle of the night, sitting shirtless on the floor beside the motel bed, hunched over my laptop while the AC rattled like a dying engine. I didn't even think it would go anywhere. It was for me. For my own sanity. A letter to a child who wasn't mine, about a life I was never given a choice in. I called it, just so you know. It was raw. Honest. Probably too honest. I wrote that I wasn't his father, not by blood, not by choice. But that didn't mean I wished him harm. I wrote about how I had loved his mother when she was still a person who looked me in the eyes, not through me. I wrote about the smell of her hair when we first danced in our living room. About the Sunday mornings she used to sing off-key while burning toast. I wrote about how those things faded. Not overnight, but painfully, like something dying in slow motion. I wrote about betrayal and manipulation, and how sometimes love doesn't get murdered. It gets starved until it collapses. I ended it with a single sentence that I meant more than anything I've ever said. You deserve the truth, even if it ruins the fairy tale. I saved it as a PDF. I didn't know why. I didn't send it to anyone. But I should have remembered. Kasia had access to my Google Drive. That mistake, that single oversight, changed everything. 2 days after I wrote it, I got an email from her. The subject line just said, "Seriously?" I opened it, and there it was, a full copy of the letter, with her commentary added in red text like a twisted editor. She'd responded to every paragraph, where I said, "You weren't mine, but I would have tried if I'd been given a choice." She wrote, "You had a choice. You ran." Where I wrote about how she'd grown distant and secretive, she responded with, "You stopped being interesting. I needed more. Sorry you couldn't keep up." And at the end, she left this dagger. "You want to sound noble, but you're just bitter I stopped needing you." I stared at her words for a long time. The coldness, the sheer lack of humanity. This wasn't someone who felt guilt. This was someone trying to control the narrative. To frame herself as the misunderstood victim and me as the man who failed a child he hadn't even agreed to father. And then I made the dumbest decision of all. I responded. Not to her, but I posted the letter online. Anonymously. On a private forum I used to visit when I needed support. I didn't name names. I didn't include real locations. But the emotions? The details? They were all there. I titled it, "I was asked to raise another man's child without ever being told the truth." It blew up. Thousands of responses. Some supportive, some brutal, some accusing me of being weak, some praising me for walking away. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't post it for attention. I posted it because I needed someone, anyone, to understand that I had been manipulated into being the emotional landing pad for someone else's disaster. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. Because someone recognized the story. Someone who knew her. 2 nights later, I received a direct message from a burner account. No profile picture. No history. Just one sentence. "She's done this before." Attached were screenshots. Old texts. Blurry photos. A different guy. Same pattern. The man in the screenshots had gone through something eerily familiar: sudden pregnancy, claims of paternity, emotional guilt tripping. The timeline wasn't identical, but the blueprint was. She had a pattern. She found emotionally stable men. Quiet types. Guys who wouldn't fight back right away. She got pregnant, or claimed to, and used that child as a tether to keep them in her orbit, even if the biological truth didn't line up. Every time it ended, she flipped the story. The man was a coward, a failure, a deadbeat. And every time, she found someone new to absorb the wreckage. I couldn't breathe. Kasha hadn't just broken me. She'd chosen me. Like a tool. Like a role to be filled. That realization hit harder than anything she ever said. I wasn't her husband. I was a placeholder. An emotional crutch. A background character in a soap opera she'd been writing for years. So I decided to write her back. Not another letter, but a public post. This time, with my name attached. Because if she wanted a narrative, I'd give her one. But it wouldn't be the one she wrote. I didn't sleep the night I found out she'd done it before. I just sat there. Laptop open. Blank document in front of me. The cursor blinked like it was daring me to type. Like it knew this wasn't just some therapy letter or anonymous post I could bury under a throwaway username. This time, it would have my name attached. My face. My voice. For once, I wouldn't let her control the script. It took me 5 hours to write it. I didn't use flowery words. I didn't try to sound strong. I wasn't. I just told the truth, from the first red flag to the final insult. How she had manipulated me into fatherhood like it was a chore she could delegate. How she weaponized kindness, predictability, loyalty. How she smiled while lying through her teeth, then punished me when I believed her. I wrote it all. And then I did the one thing I never thought I would. I posted it publicly. My name. My story. Her actions. No accusations. Just documentation. I even uploaded parts of the spreadsheet she sent me, redacted, but real. The email. The fridge note. Her response to my letter, line by heartless line. I posted it to a forum I once trusted, and then I logged off and turned off my phone. What happened next unraveled faster than I could have imagined. 3 hours later, I received the first text, not from Kasha, but from a mutual friend named Avery. We hadn't spoken in months. The message said, "Dude, are you okay? What you wrote is going viral. She's losing it." Viral? I didn't understand what that meant. I hadn't even checked the comments. But then Avery sent screenshots. The post had been shared across multiple threads, picked up by a blog that covered relationship stories of the month, and then clipped into a short-form video that was spreading on social media. My inbox was flooded. Some people called me pathetic. Others said I was brave. A few accused me of making it up entirely until other commenters began coming forward. 3 other men. All different states. Different timelines. But same playbook. Same pattern. One said she'd told him he was infertile, and that's why she'd needed a donor. Another said she claimed she was polyamorous and he was just one of several, until he found out she was pregnant and cut off everyone else. Another showed receipts from a paternity test Kasha allegedly tried to forge. And that's when I knew this wasn't just betrayal. It was a scheme. A controlled, vicious cycle. A loop she ran on men like me who didn't scream, didn't question, didn't fight. Not at first, anyway. By day's end, Kasha broke her silence. I didn't hear from her directly, of course. But she made a long, carefully written post on her own social media, one of those 2 perfectly worded clarifications that smell like PR statements. She claimed I was distorting the timeline, that emotions were high, and that she was deeply hurt by the public airing of private matters. She didn't deny any of it. She just tried to reframe it. The part that made my stomach turn was this. Jeremy has always struggled with emotional regulation. He interpreted my need for independence as betrayal, and now he's weaponizing that pain. Weaponizing. The word hit me like a slap, as if I had twisted her manipulation into something worse than what it was. As if I had taken a knife to my own back and blamed her for handing it to me. That night, for the first time since leaving, I sat in that motel bathroom and cried. Not little sniffles. Not cinematic single tears. Full body shaking, fists clenched, forehead against the sink sobbing. Because even when you're free of someone physically, their voice, that warped version of you they build in their head, doesn't leave quietly. She was still trying to redefine me, and people were still listening. But then something happened I didn't expect. Her sister, Mara, messaged me. We weren't close. Barely more than acquaintances during the marriage. But she sent me a short message with 2 words. She's lying. And then another. You're not the first family she's wrecked. The next morning, we met in a park near the old house Kasia and I shared. Mara brought receipts. Literally, emails, texts, voice memos, even an old journal Kasia had kept when she was 23 that documented how boring her long-term boyfriend was and how she wished she could shake things up by faking something dramatic. It was disturbing, intimate, terrifying. Kasia hadn't just manipulated. She enjoyed it. There were patterns, dates, timelines, and one particular journal entry that made me feel like I was watching my entire past get reprogrammed by someone else's cruelty. Men like Jeremy don't leave. They stall. They beg. And when they finally do, it's always too late. That's when I win. I closed the notebook and whispered, she said I'd raise the kid. Mara nodded. She did the same to Isaac. Then to Ben. Then to Tyler. You were next. I asked her why she was helping me. She didn't hesitate. Because she's my sister, not my God. I left the park with all of it, evidence, clarity, grief. But more importantly, I left with one undeniable fact. This wasn't about just one betrayal. This was a woman who burned people for sport. And I was done playing the fool. The next move? That would be mine. It's strange how quickly the truth can become a weapon when you've spent years being too polite to pick it up. After meeting with Mara, everything clicked into place, not just what Kasia had done to me, but what she'd done to others, and how perfectly she'd sculpted herself into the misunderstood heroine of every single wreck she created. I spent the next 2 days going through every piece of evidence Mara gave me. Old emails, dated screenshots, audio clips where Kasia vented about manipulating men because, in her words, someone needs to take care of the mess while I enjoy the moment. I listened to her casually laugh about how she could make anyone believe anything if she cried at the right time. And I did something petty. Really petty. But at that point, I wasn't aiming to be noble. I was aiming to stop her. I compiled it all, not into another post, but into a digital folder. I called it the Lighthouse Files. A nod to what she used to call me. Her lighthouse. Her safe space. Her fallback. I uploaded everything. Her manipulative emails, the edited version of my letter she twisted, the voice memos, even her own journal excerpts that made her sound like she was auditioning for the role of a sociopath in a true crime documentary. And then I did something that still makes my hands shake thinking about it. I sent the folder to everyone. Her family. Her work colleagues. Our mutual friends. Even some of the men she had used before me, those who were brave enough to come forward and say, yes, that happened to me too. The only person I didn't send it to was her. Because she didn't need a copy of the truth. She already knew it. I didn't expect what happened next. By noon the next day, my inbox looked like a war zone. Kasia's brother emailed me first. Just 4 words. I had no idea. Her former coworker sent me a message filled with curse words and ended it with, she did this to her old boss too. He got fired over her lie. Another ex-boyfriend, someone I hadn't even heard of, messaged me and said, she told me I was the one who made her sterile. I found out she'd been on birth control the whole time. Each new message was like pouring acid on old wounds, but it also made me feel less crazy, less alone. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Kasia didn't ruin me out of passion. She ruined me out of habit. I sat in that dingy motel room watching her world quietly unravel, and you'd think I'd feel satisfaction. Maybe even victory. But I didn't. I felt hollow. Because what I wanted, more than revenge, more than justice, was the one thing I was never going to get from her. Acknowledgement. An honest moment. A whisper of remorse. A real apology. Something. Anything. Instead, that night, I got a voicemail. It was her voice, quiet, small, almost rehearsed. She said, I know you think this is all me. And maybe you're right. But you always acted like a victim, Jeremy. Even when I needed you. You disappeared when I asked for strength. And now you're trying to ruin me for not loving you the way you wanted." She paused, sniffled, and added, "You wanted me to be someone I'm not. And now you're punishing me for it." Then she hung up. No apology. No denial. Just blame, wrapped in a fragile tone. I listened to that message 5 times. Not because I believed her, not anymore, but because part of me wanted to. The old me. The lighthouse. The one who always tried to fix what she broke. But that version of me was gone. Buried beneath all the times I swallowed my instincts. The times I accepted half-truths as love. The times I said, "It's okay," when it really wasn't. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the voicemail to Mara. She replied with a single emoji, the trash can. It should have ended there. But Kasia wasn't finished. The next morning, I got a knock on my motel room door. When I opened it, I saw a woman standing there I didn't recognize. Early 30s, plain clothes, holding a piece of paper and a folded baby blanket. She said, "I was told you're the father." My stomach collapsed. I just stood there, door open, motel air thick with the scent of detergent and something that smelled like regret. Her hand was still outstretched, holding a folded baby blanket, pale blue with tiny whales stitched along the edge. The kind of thing people buy when they still believe life will go the way they planned. "I was told you're the father," she repeated, and my brain, which had been running like a freight train for weeks, slammed to a halt. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I couldn't even blink properly. My mouth was dry, my fingers twitching at my side like they weren't sure whether to grab the blanket or slam the door. She didn't look like a threat. She looked tired, worn. Not someone delivering a trap, but someone caught in one herself. Finally, I managed. "Who told you that?" She blinked, like I'd asked a dumb question. "Kasia. She said you'd agreed to raise the baby, that you were already involved, that you were waiting." "Waiting?" I took a step back. "I don't even know who you are." Her face dropped a little, and for the first time, her hand with the blanket faltered. "You really don't?" I shook my head slowly, trying to piece together the impossible. "Is that her baby?" The woman looked confused now. "No, it's mine." But she said, she hesitated, reached into her bag, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Here, maybe you should just read this." I took it with trembling hands. It was a printed email thread, one I wasn't part of, but my name was all over it. Dozens of lines where Kasia was promising assistance, promising me, saying I had experience with unstable men, that I knew how to show up, and that I was planning to be a full-time guardian while she handled the emotional side. She had offered me to this woman like I was some kind of registered volunteer dad, a plug-and-play caretaker, someone who could be counted on to clean up a life he never even lived in. "I'm sorry," the woman said, clearly watching my reaction. "If this is some kind of scam, I didn't mean to ambush you. I have no one else." I believed her. She sounded so convincing. Said you had a stable income, that you were calm under pressure, that you'd raised kids before. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I'd hit the part of my breakdown arc where the only thing left was absurdity. "I've never even changed a diaper," I whispered. Her expression shifted from confusion to something like horror. And suddenly, I felt sorry for her. Because she had been drawn into the same storm. Kasia had used her too, manipulated her with the same calm voice, the same crocodile tears, the same orchestrated performance that made good people feel guilty just for setting boundaries. "She's been telling people I'm the father of her baby," I said quietly, voice dry and hollow, "and now she's promising I'll raise yours?" The woman's face flushed with humiliation. I didn't know who else to trust. "I just gave birth 3 weeks ago." She was so kind. "She said you'd been through it before, that you understood betrayal, that you were looking for redemption." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Kasia had found another way to keep me in the story, even after I left. She didn't need me physically present to keep using me. She'd made me into a concept, a role, a legend she could sell to people who were just desperate enough to believe in it. I didn't yell at the woman. I didn't tell her to leave. I just sat down on the edge of the motel bed, letter still in hand, and stared at the floor. She lingered awkwardly by the door. After a long silence, she whispered, "I'm sorry," and left the blanket on the table before closing the door behind her. I didn't move for hours. When I finally did, I picked up the blanket and held it like it might explode. I couldn't stop thinking about it, not the child, not the woman, but the way Kasia had managed to do something new, something I hadn't even anticipated. She had gone from manipulating individuals to engineering entire narratives where I wasn't even a participant, just a prop. A stable-sounding name she could lean on. A safe man she could promise to others as casually as someone offering a ride to the airport. I thought I'd escaped her story. I was wrong. She was still telling it. I just wasn't allowed in the writer's room anymore. Later that night, I called Mara, told her everything. She didn't sound shocked. In fact, she sounded tired. Tired in the same way I had felt for weeks. She doesn't stop, Elliot, she said. She reinvents you so she doesn't have to reinvent herself. You're the cleanup crew in every version of her collapse. I asked her what I should do. She said, you have two choices, vanish completely, or make her lies too risky to use again. I stared at that blanket for a long time. And in that moment, I knew what had to happen next. Not a post, not a confrontation, not a lawsuit, but something permanent. Because the final page wasn't going to be hers anymore. I didn't sleep that night either. It's strange what the body can endure when your mind is louder than your heartbeat. I lay on the motel bed staring at the ceiling like it might open up and offer a sign, some billboard-sized answer to the question that had haunted me since I left Kasha. What do I do now? Because I was done surviving her. I wanted to start surviving me. The next morning, I folded the baby blanket, placed it gently into a box along with the email printouts, and walked it over to a local women's shelter. I left a note with it that read, for someone who needs to believe there are still good people left in the world. I didn't leave a name. I didn't need one. That blanket didn't belong to my story anymore. Then, I deleted the folder. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was finally ready to let go. The Lighthouse files had done their job. The truth was out. People knew. I didn't need to keep rereading the pain like it was homework. I'd carried her weight long enough. I wasn't her lighthouse anymore. I was my own ship, finally leaving her storm. A week later, I moved. Out of the motel, out of the city, out of the zip code where everything reminded me of her. I took a new job. A smaller role. Less pressure. It didn't pay much, but it gave me time. Space. Clarity. I rented a little upstairs apartment above a used bookstore in a town no one's ever heard of, the kind of place where people still wave to you when you walk down the street. The owner, a woman named June with silver hair and combat boots, gave me the key and said, it's quiet. No drama allowed. I told her that was all I ever wanted. I didn't tell her why I left my old life. I didn't tell anyone, really. The post online eventually died down, as they always do. Kasha's world kept spinning, I'm sure, but without me in its orbit, her gravity couldn't touch me anymore. Every day, I got up early, made coffee, walked to work, helped people fix their computers and organize their files. Simple things. Honest things. Things that couldn't be twisted into manipulation. And slowly, the ache in my chest turned into something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. One evening, a few months later, I walked into the bookstore downstairs. June had left the radio playing low and the lights soft. There was a little girl sitting cross-legged in the children's corner, reading aloud to a worn-out stuffed giraffe. Her mom, mid-30s, glasses, messy bun, was sipping tea on a nearby couch, watching her with a calm kind of joy I used to think only existed in greeting card commercials. They didn't know me. They didn't ask anything of me. But in that moment, I realized I was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the fake kind you put on for appearances, but the kind that sneaks up on you when your soul realizes it's safe again. That night, I wrote something in my journal, the first entry in a long time that wasn't about her. It said, you are not who they said you were. You are not what they made you carry. You are free now. Be free. I meant every word. Kasha may never understand what she did. She may never apologize. She may rewrite the ending 1,000 times to make herself feel better. But I don't care anymore. Because the real ending is this. I survived her. And then, somehow quietly, gently, and with no grand declarations, I started to live again. That's the part she'll never be able to take. And that's how I win.